Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is Fett263 presents Fun with Saber Effects for Proffieboard. Thanks anyone who's joining in. So today I wanted to actually cover a few different things, but if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will keep checking the chat. I see Max is on. Hey, Tom, I see you're here. Kendall Hall, thanks for joining. While I wait for a few people to join, first and foremost, I wanted to just update everybody. If you hadn't seen, I did put out the OS5 library. So this is a work in progress. So I have a lot in the queue for this, but I haven't had as much time to work on it. But there is, if you're used to the OS4 library, which is here, which is the link everybody has. The button for OS5 is right here along the top. So I just wanted to make, some people have been using, and you can use the OS4 library for OS5. It works fine. The thing with the OS5 library, at least the current state, is that it has the power save effects and it has the on-demand battery level effect. And there's a few other small effects that I've added. I actually have a large update that I'm trying to get done, but it's taking time. But so if you're using the OS4 library for OS 5.7, you can use it perfectly fine. And actually, we're going to show the OS4 library because the editor for Proffieboard hasn't been updated yet for some of the new stuff. But for those of you who are looking for some of the features for OS5, they are available if you just click the OS5 button. And then the big ones are in the style on the enhancement screen, and I'm just scrolling here. At the bottom is the addition of the on-demand battery level, and this is just the starting point. And you can build your own, which we've shown in a few previous shows, but these are what I've got built so far. And then same with the on-demand power save. And for this one, right now I've got these increments. So you could do the 10% increment, the 25% increment, or the 50%, which basically just is dim 50% or not at all. And then you also choose whether you want it to affect just the base effect or all effects. But you will, for those of you who are familiar with the library, you will notice there is no check and editor button. Frederick, as soon as he has time, will be adding effect sequence plus the new effect battery level and effect power save and a few other new additions, all of his new effects. The new functions and everything, he has to get those added to the library. So until they're available in the library, you can't take a style from the OS5 library, or I'm sorry, until the editor is updated, you can't take a style from the OS5 library into editor if you choose the new stuff. If you just skip over the new stuff, it'll work. But I wanted to let everybody know that those are there. OS5 library is there, but this is kind of the start point. I kind of put some things together to get it out because OS5 was ready and I wanted to be able to offer this, but I do have a lot coming, and I have a big batch that will hopefully be pushed up in soon. I don't have an exact time frame, and then I've got a lot of smaller updates coming. So let's see. So let me catch up with the chat for everybody who joined. Hey Kim, hey Tyler, I did say hi to Max and Tom and Kendall. And let's see. Yep. Thanks everybody for joining. If you do have questions, put them in the chat, and I'll try to cover them as well. Yeah, Max. The effect sequence doesn't work in the editor. Same with if you do marble, circular section. What else? There's a bunch of them. I'm drawing a blank. And then the new effects. So the effect power save, effect battery level, effect user 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But there's a lot of new stuff that was added to OS5 that Frederick has to get time to add it to the library. So if you take a style from the OS5 library, drop it into editor, you are going to get error messages. So for right now, if you want to edit the OS5 stuff, it'll be by hand. But at this particular point in time, the OS4 library and the OS5 library are very close to each other. There's a few small additions. There's a couple new styles I dropped in OS5 that I did have ready, but I have a lot more that's coming. And actually, while we're in the OS5 library, I did add something, a couple of controls in here for those of you who are familiar. Actually, get this. But yeah, so there's an error. So I did add the ability to find a style quickly. So I typically name all of my styles just to keep them unique. So if you know a specific style, because this library is getting so long, if you're looking for a specific style, you can actually just pick it from the list here, and anything that's brand new, I'll put the new in front of. But now you can just jump to any of these just by clicking in the menu. And then because I added that jump menu, I added this little top guy here, which is nothing special, but lets you go back up to the top. So you can go through and choose your styles much quicker. And then, of course, everything else works just as before. And once Frederick gets the editor updated, that check in editor button will be added to the library. So it's not there right now. But let's see, I think caught up on the chats, everybody. Yep. All right. So I actually had a question. I don't see Jason on yet, but there was a question over the weekend that actually kind of gave me the idea for the topic for today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about blast effects, clash effects, and lockup effects, how to edit them, but also there's more than just editing colors that we can do. So I want to show those. So if Jason doesn't join, hopefully he'll get the opportunity to see this in the future. But for anybody who's interested, that's kind of what I'm going to focus on. And I want to kind of go through stuff. And then I'm actually going to do an update to the library with some of what we talk about tonight. But because it's going to take me a little while, if you want to get a jump start and you see what you want to do here and you learn from it, go ahead and take it and start playing with it. So let's see. Hey, Jerrod, thanks for joining. All right, so let's do a little homework. So what I did here is, so first and foremost, all the blast, clash, and lockup effects in my library have always been traditionally white. Two reasons for it. The first reason is my very first saber with Proffie that I was going after was the Kylo Ren saber, and the effects in the sequel trilogies, the lockups in particular, as well as the clashes, were white. And then in addition to that, on certain colors where you have your base color being very bright, other colors don't always show through well. So when you want to have a nice looking lockup, when you want to have like a nice bright clash effect, white is traditionally what I've been using. But because I've had questions about how you change the colors over time, what I am going to do is the library is going to get an update as part of this first big update where you can actually now choose colors for your blast, clash, and lockup. And while it doesn't sound like a big deal, for some people they're not able to do the editor, or they're just not comfortable with it, or sometimes they can't find the style. So I want to show you how to do that, but I'm also going to have the updates coming to the library for this. But I've got a bunch of screenshots here. So I typically like to research everything that I'm making. I like to have some point of reference. Some of the crazier effects are just from my imagination, but a lot of effects I actually do go back to the films or the reference material. So that's what I wanted to start with for everybody, because I want to kind of explain the coloring and everything. So first and foremost, this is a shot from the original trilogy. This is the Return of the Jedi. It's one of the this is one of the best scenes for showing a blaster block in the original trilogy. They didn't do a lot of heavy effects in the original trilogy, and I am not an effects guy, so anybody out there who actually does this for a living or knows this stuff better than me, I'm sure I'm going to destroy trying to explain it. So I'm explaining it with layman's terms and a layman's understanding. But so this scene here, when Luke is deflecting the blaster blocks, you can see there's kind of a yellowish hue to the blast area impact. They also missed the saber because I guess when they're drawing on the film itself, it's offset. So his saber's over here and the blast is over here, but it actually shows up in a few spots. But so in the original trilogy, the blaster block and then also the other effects on the blades, they do have a little bit of a yellowish hue to them. But I'm going to show you, it's a little different every time. Now, this is the battle at the end of Return of the Jedi. And what they do for clash effects, this is one of the moments where you get a clash. Again, they didn't properly align it. They just make a big kind of a yellowish flash over the whole section, which is actually interesting. So at full speed, you don't actually see this, but when you do freeze frame, you can actually see that this is the actual effect that they do. Now going at full speed, that's not really noticeable. You get these flashes, but you're not sure what it is. But again, it's got a yellowish hue to it. And I'm hoping, yeah, YouTube seems to show it up. Yeah, Tom, I have definitely, being in the 501st, you got to research everything. So I went back to the films and my resources to get this stuff. So Tom was putting in the chat that I am definitely sick and twisted, and definitely a big time Star Wars nerd. for a very long time. But yeah, so I wanted to get some reference materials for y'all. But so this is the clash effect, and again, in the original trilogy, it does have a yellow hue to it. And then the last is the lockup, and this actually there was another scene as well. Actually, when Vader blocks Luke right in front of the Emperor's face, it's a little off camera, but there isn't actually a big lockup area. There's a little bit of yellow in here, but in the original trilogy and most of the references that I found where they have this, they do the big bright flash, but they don't do a big lockup section. But there is still a little bit of a yellow in here, and it could also be the combination of these two colors blending together. But so for the original trilogy, there's a little bit of yellow in that clash, blast, and lockup. So we're going to take a look at that. And actually what I did was, in order to pull that color out, this is kind of what you get. And we're going to come back to this. But so I found that lemon chiffon. Now, for colors, and this is just set up just to show you in editor the kind of the color. So the lemon chiffon looks pretty good. And then the other color that looked pretty decent is this light yellow, although it's a lot whiter. So for the original trilogy, you can see this one's a lot lighter. The lemon chiffon, go back here, looks closest. Now you could really get in there and dial up RGB values, but that's for the lockup. For Clash, Blast, and Lockup for original trilogy, what I'm going to do in my library is I'm going to set it up as original trilogy, and I'm going to use the lemon chiffon as the base color. And again, that's going to be based off of these screen references, and actually this is probably the best. So if you're, hopefully memory serves, because it can't really put these side by side that well, but that's the color that we're going to get for original trilogy as a new option in the library. Or if you're building your own, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, I found lemon chiffon, light yellow, yes, but it's a little too close to white for the difference. Lemon chiffon, maybe you don't love the name, but that's the color that I think works well for original trilogy. Up next is going to be the prequels. Now, the prequels, they gave Sabers a ton of new capabilities, and they really amped up the effects on the Saber. So particularly if you go from watching the original trilogy and then go to the prequels, I know that's not the right order, the Sabers themselves have so much more visual effects, and obviously the technology changed quite a bit, but it seems like the Saber technology just itself grew. But so this is Blaster Block. This is from, I chose Revenge of the Sith. Some of the other scenes I was trying to do from the episodes 1 and 2, there was never great color because of the background color or being too bright or too light or too much going on. So this one I was using for reference. And you can see it's a lot more of a orangey yellow as opposed to this guy here, which is a very muted yellow. So that's the Blaster Block in the prequels. It's an orangey kind of going, that color. So I'm looking in this range here, that aura. So obviously the center gets white, but that aura is what I'm looking at. And then again, prequel, this is again, Revenge of the Sith. This is the Clash, and they do the Clash to Lockup in the prequels much more like what we see on our Sabers now, where it's, your Clash Lockup kind of blend into each other. Whereas in the original trilogy, it was a big bright Clash, and then Lockup not so much. But so it's that same color again. It's if you notice, so this one's obviously a lot larger because it's a closer up. But that's the kind of color we're going for. And then lastly is the actual Lockup, and it actually gets a really bright, and you get kind of a red aura on the outer ring of their Lockup. Here you've got that bright orangey gold, but then it actually, hopefully it's YouTube. Yeah, YouTube's showing it a little bit. There is a red aura in here, so they really added a lot of effects in there. So as a start point for the prequel trilogy, I'm using this Navajo white as the color, and this will kind of make more sense after we get past the kind of explanation. So I'm working up to it. So you can see it kind of gives you that orangey aura on the edges, just like what we're seeing in here. Now it's not a perfect match, and we can actually do some blending, which is part of what I'm going to show, where you can actually get those two colors. So there's kind of the orange gold in this level, but that further out level has that little red ring on it that they did. And then the animated series. So in the animated series, they really go almost pure yellow on their effects. So this is a blaster block. This is from the latest season. Hopefully this isn't spoilery to anybody, but it's you can see it's a lot more yellow even than what they had in the prequel trilogies. The prequel trilogies was a yellowish orange, but the animation almost gets to pure yellow. And then the clashes, again, they're using almost a pure yellow. And then the lockup, same thing. They're getting the pure yellow effect. So what I'm doing for, again, this is what I'm using as a baseline in the library. You obviously can choose your own colors. But for animated series, I've actually put together an RGB mix. What happens if you get too close to that pure yellow, it doesn't look quite right on the actual saber. So I'm starting at this level. I might change this up, but this is kind of the color. So you got your original trilogy is very muted yellow. The prequel trilogy is going to be this Navajo white, which you can see has that orange to it. And then my animated will be a little bit more yellow to it. And then finishing off, and I know there's a lot of other references like the video games and stuff, but obviously the sequel trilogy, which is where most of my effects have come from in terms of point of reference. So there wasn't actually any great blaster blocks. The blaster blocks in The Force Awakens with Kylo they're pretty much white too, but so I don't have a blaster block picture. I didn't grab that screen, but it's kind of more on the white side. So this is their clash, which is white, and then they bleed out the blue like crazy. But that's that lens flare stuff that they what's his name, Abrams loves to do anyway. But so for the most part, your lockup effects, which is where my library has been so far, is pretty much white. You can get a blend on the very edge, and then the lockup itself is almost pure white. And that's typically what's already in the library. So in the library now, all the lockups are already, and the clashes and everything are automatically white. So if you're using for sequel trilogy, white's going to still be available. So that's going to be this one here, which is pretty much what everybody's seen. So what I'm going to have as a start point with the next update on the library is going to be the 4 color options. And again, you're going to be able to edit them anyway, but you'll have your original trilogy, prequels, animated, and sequel trilogy as options for blast, clash, and lockup. And these are just kind of the baseline ones. I've actually got a few ideas to do some other stuff, and some of it we're going to talk about tonight. Let me just catch up if there's any questions. Let's see. Hopefully I didn't lose and bore everybody. Yeah, Max. Yeah, definitely always try. I mean, there's kind of a realm of artistic license in some areas, but I do try to get some references and go for accuracy, just because I know a lot of people out there like it. Let's see. Okay, royal blue. Royal blue. I don't know the exact mix actually. I usually go by pictures, so I'd need a picture of your representation of royal blue. But I just play with the RGB values. Typically, you can also, like, we'll just go here. You can also go into this, if you, just in case anybody's not aware, you don't have to use these listed colors. You don't have to know your RGB values. If you go to this box right here, it'll actually let you use a slider to pick your RGBs. So if you're in a royal blue, I don't even remember what royal blue is. Royal blue maybe in this family. But you can grab here. It's going to do RGB 16 with much larger numbers. That's perfectly fine because Proffieboard handles it and translates it accordingly. But you can choose colors out of this actual color picker. So you can go through and just use your slider and pick it. It's a little too green. Pick any colors you want and add them in. So being able to, you can always use that color picker if you're not sure of a specific color, if you want to color match something. But let's go back, put that to white. All right, so cool. Yeah, sometimes I feel like I go off on rants. Yes, Max, RGB 16 is what it outputs. You can stick that in your config. It'll work perfectly fine. It gets translated by Proffieboard. So that's always been available there. But let's see. So now what I want to do, and actually I'm going to open a new editor screen. So the question that came up, I don't know if, now I'm blanking on names. Man, I'm getting old. I am totally blanking on names, but the original question that I was going to get to and what I'm going to be adding to the library is how to get kind of not just a single color blast. So let's go, what we're going to do is I'm going to actually just build a quick one here. I'm putting it on black on purpose, and I'll show this on the other screens in a second. And we're going to add all right, so the question that came up was, Jason, thank you for fixing me, Max. Yeah, it's like one of those things where you get the name on the tip of your tongue. Jason May, hey, there you are. Jason May is here. Yes, this was your question. I'm glad you made it. Yeah, it's one of those things. I had your name on the tip of my tongue and then just brain went blank. But so you were asking, and I'm paraphrasing, you wanted to be able to, first of all, change the effects to a yellowish like we saw in the screenshots. Hopefully you caught the beginning because I actually was going through screenshots. If not, check out the beginning of the video, and we'll touch back on it in a little bit. But you had a question also that kind of led to you wanted it to be almost two colors, which is totally possible. But the way some of these effects work, there's actually different ways to do it. And I had told you to use a layering effect. So because the starting with OS4, we have layers, we can actually do the layers a few different ways. So that's what I wanted to touch on tonight. And this is kind of like, this actually opens up a lot of possibilities to be able to do a lot of different effects. But I wanted to I'll start with Blast. Anything that works with Blast technically leads right away to Clash. Blast and Clash are almost interchangeable in terms of the effect. It's just different sounds and different gesture to create it. Also leads to Lockup. Now Lockup, particularly with Battle Mode, has a few other pieces to it. But these concepts would work Lockup, Clash, and Blast just fine. So first and foremost, if you had an effect from the library, you have your own effect, and you wanted to just change the blast color, obviously you could just change it here. And then I was showing earlier, if you wanted to go original trilogy, I would use like a lemon chiffon. If you wanted to go prequels, we would go with like a Navajo white. I had a custom mix for the animated series, and then if you want to go the sequels, it was white, but obviously that's what's there. So for our purposes, let's go with the Navajo white, which would be the prequels. And you'd be able to look here, and now when I do the blast, it'll have that yellowish look. And there's a number of different blaster effects, but that's that yellowish look. Now, what I was explaining is if you want to layer these so that you have two colors, you can. So you can't really use it, and this is where it kind of comes into, is you can't do a gradient on a localized effect. So an effect that has a shape, which is where these guys come in. And for those of you who haven't seen before, a bump is a shape here, and then smooth step is the other shape. If you put a gradient, and we can actually kind of show it, just throw this just for purposes. You can't really throw a gradient at a shape, because what's going to happen is that the gradient always considers the full blade. Now, if you want, this looks pretty cool, but that gradient, if I move this bump, will stay solid. So if we move this down and look at it, you'll see it's going to get the red from that gradient. So you can't, now, if this is what you're going for, great, but you can't use a gradient inside of shapes. And the shapes, again, are the bump and the smooth steps. They're kind of, for Clash and Lockup and Blast, you're going to almost always use bump, or you're going to use one of the layer effects. But let's put this back. What color did we have? I think that was lemon chiffon. Let's move you back up. All right, so if I wanted to do the blast this way, that's going to give me kind of that Navajo white effect, which again, this was, if you go based on the screenshots, would be kind of the prequels. But now you can, so if we, because this is set as blast, is going to keep disappearing on us, but you'll see it. if I want to layer this, I can layer in another blast that's going to be identical, but just a little different. That will actually give me two colors. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put something on top of this one. And I'm typing. You can use the buttons for, and let's put a white on top of it. So what's going to happen right now is when I hit blast, it's going to be white. And the reason for that is these are actually the same size, but they don't have to be. Again, we're layering whatever's at the bottom is over the top. So this one I'm going to leave. If I go into this responsive blast here, you'll see blast size. Let's double that blast size and go in. And now what's going to happen is I've got two blasts layered. The white is going to be smaller and centered over this Navajo white, and that creates a two-color effect. Now it's going very quickly, but you'll get that center being white and then that edge being that Navajo white. Oops, I pressed the wrong button. Now, if you want, because you're blending these two layers, you can also get brighter on your underlayer. So the layer that's underneath, I can actually just go straight yellow, and it actually still looks okay. So you'll see that center stays white because we actually have the white blast in the middle of it, and then you've got a larger yellow or whatever color blast underneath it. Now I know people are going to ask about red or whatever color you want, but you can totally do whatever color you want underneath, and that's what your effects are going to look like. So you get to blend these colors. Now that works with the responsive blast fade. And all we're doing, so when I was talking to Jason in particular about layering the effects, if you lay one over the top of the other, and I use my hands a lot, I am half Italian, all you have to do is make the one that's underneath larger so that it shows through. If you have it the same size or smaller, obviously the layer on top will cover it. So you want the layer underneath to be larger, and you change that in the size. Now I'm going to leave this. I'm going to open another editor window, and I'm going to end up with a lot of windows open. And I'm doing everything on black, just so it's really visible what's going on. So now let's grab. So now that's one technique. And if you have questions, ask. I'm kind of going to run through the basics really fast, and then I can answer some more specific questions. So let's go to just responsive blast. I forgot my L. There's a layer. And then close that. So now this one, you'll see this one separates. This one has that kind of wave effect to it, so it hits and then dissipates across. So if you wanted to, you could layer two on top, but you don't have to with this one because this one actually lends itself to the other technique. And there's actually a bunch of techniques. I don't think I'll get to everything, but there's just so many possibilities. But I wanted to introduce these to you. You can go in here. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to change this color, and I'm going to make this color a transition. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the color itself to a transition. And again, you can use the buttons. All right, and I know these by heart. I'm going to start with oops. Helps if I type. My fingers are not listening to me, so I'm going to go start with an instant. I'm going to go white. I want to fade it, and if you'll notice, this particular the responsive blast has a fade out time. So you want to make sure that you're less than that fade out time, otherwise what I'm about to do won't actually show. So I'm going to start with it at half. So I'm going to do a fade out, a fade of 100. And just so it's really visible, I'm going to do yellow. Now you can do the other colors too, but I already know because of the time that if I do too light a color, you don't see it. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do another fade. And I want this second fade to actually be longer than the blast speed and the fade out time, just so that this doesn't disappear on me. And I can actually show you what would happen if we didn't do it right. Let's make this one 400. I totally missed something too. I'm sure somebody put it in the chat already. I forgot to concat this. So if somebody caught me on that one, I missed that step. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set this for effect blast also. All right, so now if I submit, good. So what's going to happen now, when you do the blast effect, the blast is actually going to transition itself internally. It's going to go from a white flash at the impact, which is the center, and then it's going to fade to that yellow on the edges. So you'll see at the very tail end, I'm getting that yellow. Now, if I want to make it so that that yellow comes up more prominent, I'm going to change this fade. And then when I do my blast, it'll get more yellow quicker. So what happens is that, and it's happening really quick, obviously, because you're talking milliseconds here, but the initial blast starts white and then immediately is going to fade to yellow, but it's also moving. So that's why what it does is it creates that aura that we had on the other one. So we have this aura effect by layering these two, because these stay stationary. They're just in a single spot, but you get a white, I changed this to red, but you get the idea. It's a white center with red. Now for moving effects, I could layer them on top of each other, but what it would do is it would make that wave bigger. So the wave wouldn't be as noticeable. So if you want that wave to stay visible with that separation, what we do is we actually do a transition of colors within the effect itself. So you're putting it in the color field. So it was responsive blast. The colors value is now a transition. So, and all it is it's when you hit blast, you're going to do the blast effect, but you're also going to kick off this change from white to yellow. And I think if we go maybe halfway between 100 and 200, I think it's going to look its best. So if we go back up, so you'll see we get a white center, and it's super quick, but you get that white center and you get that yellow outside. And again, this would work for blast or clash, but those are two methods for doing kind of the layering. One is actually just layering two effects on top of each other. The other one is actually changing that color with a transition. And let me grab the questions. I see a couple come in. Jason. Yeah, you can totally. If you don't want such a large blast area, so what we would do is first we'll change the second one, right? So let's make this second one a little smaller. So let's maybe go, and you don't have to double. I was just kind of doubling as a, main thing, but you're going to change this blast. And again, these parameters are going to be different for every effect. So this is the blast fade, responsive blast fade. But let's just show it. So we change that blast size, and then we're going to do the under layer. So this is the layer that's underneath. We can take this down to you can make it doesn't have to be double. I think we did 4. You could do 6 on that. Let's see what that looks like. That might be really tight, but it still works. So that's essentially what you're going to get. And then obviously if you want more red, you would just increase the size of the underneath layer. Let's see. Voice and mic control buttonless. Voice and mic control is going to be outside my realm of expertise, but anything's possible. Yeah, we were talking about that with Space and Jedi Arms Dealer 2 weeks ago, I mean, just really cool ideas, particularly syncing up to the movie. I'm not anything in particular, but my focus is always the visuals. That's where I do all my time, and all my focus. So, no button control is also something that would be in the future. And I don't know if Tom's still on, but I know Tom's already going after it. And I believe SA22C actually said he was going to go after a no button prop file. I have it on my list, but I don't know when I'm going to get to it. But the mic and sound, I would bounce that off Frederick or a few of the other guys who are doing stuff with sound. Rob Kenobi on TRA has done some good stuff with sound. They would be much better at answering that than me. I take sound for granted. I use the font maker sounds. Every once in a while I can do a little bit of work in Audacity, but I'm always more focused visually. Let's see. Saber Blast Dent. What? I'm not sure what you looking for that. If you want to give me more explanation, Max. Yeah, Megtooth, you're doing a no button saber. Yeah, It's definitely possible. We were talking. You were on. Jedi Arms Day was asking about it, and I've been doing some thinking on it. I've scratched out some ideas. Actually, you're not gonna be able to read this. No, it's not gonna show up on camera. I have a running list of what I'm working for OS 6, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things on my wish list. My handwriting is terrible, so nobody would be able to read it anyway. But totally, it's one of the items on that list. I have some other stuff that's actually already underway. So I'm going to eventually hope to get a no button working. But if you get it working, Tom, ahead of me, that's great. And I also know SA22C actually mentioned it. So the areas that I think are going to come into play is it's going to be really hard to have color change. It's going to be really tricky to try to get your tracks to play, and you're probably going to lose like the power save and the battery level and that stuff, just because even with gestures, there's going to be just not enough controls. But no button, I mean, it's definitely possible to get a lot of control out of your saber with no button. It's just a little creativity is going to be needed. But go for it, definitely. Let's see. Yeah, blast will be something. I have a couple ideas on that, but yeah, that's definitely going to be coming. Oh, okay, this was Max. So Max was asking, oh, you were asking about a blast dent. You wanted to go black in the middle? Yeah, we can do that. Let's put a color on the background. Let's go with a blue saber because it's black, obviously. And then what you would do is this upper level, I would just change this to black. And what you're going to do is you're going to get, so that's really tiny. We probably have to enlarge it because color always beats out no color. So let's go up on that. And we'll go up on this, and you're going to want to play with your sizes. The other thing, just for those who are going to test this stuff out, the editor is great at testing, but the size of stuff in editor and the size on your saber can vary differently depending on how long your saber is, because all the size stuff, so size based on the bump and all that other stuff, is actually a function of how many pixels you have defined in your blade. So if you have like a 144 strip, which I think is what this is meant to emulate, on the screen that bump is going to look really tiny, but when you actually loaded it, it wouldn't be nearly as small if you have like 130 pixels on your strip. So just something to keep in mind, that the sizes, you sometimes have to come back and edit them. But I think I changed both those numbers. Let's take a peek. So yeah, so the color is going to overtake. So let's turn this color to white maybe, so we can really see that difference. But you can totally put a dent just by putting the black in the middle there. But again, you'd want to see how that comes into play with maybe going up a little more even. But you could totally, all you're doing is layering it up. You're going to get that black center and those white edges on that one. And let's see. I've kind of lost track, so I might have to catch back up. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. Obviously, push works. So this is I'm bouncing back and forth between effects and working with the no buttons with Tom. Yep, battle mode, gestures on and off. Hey, Space, thanks for joining. Yeah, thanks for all the likes. Let's take a look here. So, Kristian, OS 6. I actually have this already in the works, but it will be OS 6. It's not, there's some work on it, but this is something I'm already actually working on. It's actually one of the things on the list I showed earlier, is there will be what I'm planning for OS 6. I don't have it done yet, but for OS 6, there'll actually be a way to deactivate gestures with a button press or some combination of control, so that you can you don't have to time it out. That way, particularly if you are carrying your saber on your hip, or if you're using it in an event or something, and you don't want it just turning itself off, it'll be I have to figure out the buttons, but it'll be some kind of a button combination while the saber's off that will basically turn off the gesture recognition, and then all you do is do that same button combination again, and it will reactivate it. Of course, you still have that motion timeout involved. So if you have a motion timeout set for like a half hour or the 30 minutes or 15 minutes, you turn the gestures off. If you turn them on like an hour after that, it's not going to reactivate the gestures, unfortunately, because that motion timeout takes precedent. But if you have a super long motion timeout set and you want to just deactivate those gestures for a period of time, that's kind of what I'm working after. But it's actually, I've thought it out pretty well. I just haven't gotten the time to throw the code together. But anything, basically, now that OS 5.7 is out, everything that isn't in there yet is going to move to OS 6, Frederick's already said. And there's a few things some things are small and some bigger things that are in the works. There's no time on OS 6, so I know Tom, even last night in his show, was saying OS 6 isn't like right around the corner. I'm just saying it's not something that's going to come in the current iteration. It will be on the slate of OS 6, which is at some future point. It's probably going to be a couple months, although Frederick controls the timeline. I don't. But there's the 5.7 that has so much in it that everybody's got to catch up. But it's not done yet, because there was actually, before OS 5 was even halfway done, there was a bunch of stuff that was already being looked at, not just by myself, but by others. But in order to kind of keep it OS 5 manageable, Frederick basically said, hey, you know what, let's draw the line here, and that stuff I think we'll look at for OS 6. So there's stuff other people are working on. So it's not just me. I've got a little bit of stuff I'm working on. Frederick has a lot of stuff he's working on, and there's other people. Let's see. Let's see. Cool. Let me catch up with everybody. Alex, hey, thanks for joining, Alex. Purple's a tough one, man. I've been trying to fine-tune my purple forever, but I have a decent purple. I'm not going to say it's the best purple out there. I forget my color. I should know them by heart. Actually, I do have my color chart here. Where are you hiding? There you are. So let me open a new one. Max just said there is a color picker. I've been trying to get a solid purple for a long time that doesn't go into that magenta realm. And right now, and again, it's not perfect, but maybe it's a good start point. This is what I use as my primary purple as the base color, and then obviously you mix other things in with it. So now on screen it looks really perfect. In bright lights, it doesn't. In medium lights or lights off, I think it looks really good. But purple, and I'm no expert, purple's just been a tough one for neopixels and just in general. But this, in my library, this is, if you choose any of my purple blades, this is the base that I use. And then obviously I mix other colors in there for either if you have the flicker or the unstable. But this is the base purple I've typically been running. This is after a lot of trial and error. Again, sometimes how this looks on screen, when you get it on your actual saber, it looks a little different. And the other part of it is your diffusion. Particularly purples and reds, in my experience, can look really different if you have if you have the sanded, if you have the why can't I think of it? The white blade, I forget the name, and you have like the thicker diffusion, they really kind of soften. Whereas on all my blades, and I know I've said this before, I actually use clear blades, and then I just use the diffuser and the foam. And for me, when I see, sometimes people send me like the reds and the purples with that white blade, it does look different to me than what I get. Trans white, thank you, Max. I'm having a hard time with my memory tonight. But that also comes into play. So the colors can change a bit individually. So try them out. But if you load this one up, Alex, see how it is. you can tweak it a little bit. And as Max and a few other things said, you can also go into this kind of color picker. Now, the other thing that comes in, and this is actually in a lot of my effects that I don't talk about, you don't always have to go at the brightest level, because particularly in neopixel, if you go full blast on every die, you wash yourself out sometimes. So sometimes I actually pull the values down and get a little dimmer, and you get a better color out of it. So purple is one of those ones. That's why the one that I use has only a 95 for the red, and only a 210. So I don't go all the way up to 255 on even the blue die, because I found that dimming the color just a little bit, or dimming the brightness. So 255 for RGB is the top value. By pulling it down, it looks a little better. But purple is a tough one. I've been chasing it for a while. This is what I've settled on currently, but it is one of the tougher ones. Let me catch back up. Yeah, diffusion and the outer blade changes the color a bit. Some colors not as much, but reds, a lot of times reds get into that almost an orangey color if they're in the trans white blade, I find. And purple is another one that it really does change the color, at least in my opinion. Let's see. What's this? Adapter. Oh yeah, Dmitri's tri-cree. So open and honest, I've never had an in-house LED. I started NeoPixel, and that's all I've ever done. I don't know any benefit to LED. If you have LED, great. But I'm just NeoPixel. So sometimes I get questions about the tri-cree or the in-house. No experience with it. I do know that Proffie can handle them. I do know that some effects run perfectly fine. I do know that other effects, particularly localized effects, don't really. Yeah, I guess if you wanted to be able to swap back and forth, that adapter would be pretty cool. Let's see. Cool. All right. So totally got off track what I was talking about tonight, and I am getting to the tail end. I do have to cut out at 10 on the dot again, but if anybody has questions on the blasts, the clashes, I didn't get to Lockup. It's going to be the same. I did start at the top of the show for anybody who joined late. What I will be doing is my library, I'm going to actually add color options for Blast, Clash, and Lockup. If I see a question, I'm going to switch over to it, but I want to show, just in case anybody came in late and missed, what I did was I went through and got in slow-mo screen captures of each of the films, and these are going to be the colors that are going to appear in the library. Now, I still have a good amount of work on the library. I'm hoping to have it ready by the weekend, but my free time has been dwindling as things are coming back to life. The original trilogy, I found that the clashes in particular and blaster blocks, they're a very muted yellow. So in my library, when it releases with this update, you're going to have the option to choose the original trilogy color, and this will be for Blast, Clash, and Lockup, and I'm going to be using Lemon Chiffon. So if you wanted to get the jump on, you want to change your colors out, you can. I'll be using a Lemon Chiffon, and I'll be calling it the original trilogy because this is the closest color. And then in the prequels, they started getting much better with the effects, but you can see it's a very bright yellow gold effect with a kind of almost an orange aura. So for prequel, the Clash, Blast, and Lockup, if you want to choose the prequel effects in the library, they will be using Navajo White, and this is the basic idea there. And then if we go animated, so the animated series, and I went through this earlier, so if you're seeing this twice, I apologize. Is a little more yellow than the actual prequel, so I'm going to have a second animated option in the library, which will be right now I'm using this mix. I'm going to see how this looks on my blade, but it's going to be a more yellow version of the effect to give you, so you'll have the animated option. And then most of the effects, the Blast, Clash, and Lockup in my library are based off of the sequel trilogy, which uses white, which is why those effects are there. So obviously that's already what's there, but you'll get the option to choose that. So it'll be, when I release it, there will be the option for the original trilogy, prequels, animated, and sequel trilogy in terms of your colors for the Clash, Blast, and Lockup. And then I'm also going to do these some of these compounds that we talked about tonight, where we layer in 2 effects with each other. So this one we've played with and changed up, but where you get 2 colors in the effect. So like this one starts out white and turns yellow. So I'm going to build these into the library as options for those of you who aren't going to dive into this yourself, but want to have them. They are coming with the next update, and I'll announce it when the library's done. Ooh, chat went crazy. Hang on, I got to catch up with you guys. Where are we? For effects, you can layer as many as you want. Now, you have to make sure that you size them differently, because if you have a big layer over a small layer, the small layer is invisible. So that it really comes down to how you layer them up in their sizes. Mike, I'm not overly familiar with CFX, so I could get this wrong. In the color change fork, which is now seems archaic, we had the ability to change the colors and the effects separately. It's something that actually was around in the fork. I've asked Frederick about it a few times. He hasn't really wanted to bring it over. It doesn't mean it can't, but right now it's not there. The capability's there. The biggest issue, and I think this, and I hate putting words in Frederick's mouth, but I think the bigger issue is that it takes up a lot more memory. And what ends up happening is, if you throw those all in, you're going to lose the option to do a lot of other stuff. So it's kind of one of those trade-off deals where if you want to have all these blade profiles in the OS already, they're going to be taking up space and they may not be used. So you could technically, because we did it already with the color change fork. It's just when I've asked Frederick about it, he hasn't really wanted to bring that in. He did bring color change in, but the effect side, just because those effects start taking up so much space, he hasn't wanted it yet. It doesn't mean it's not something that could be added in the future, because we already did it. It's just a matter of kind of a balance. So finding a balance of, and finding if it's really, I think if there was enough demand, Frederick would consider it more, and certainly we can look at it again. But the memory, the last time I asked him about it, is the biggest concern, because you're going to dedicate memory on your board for an effect that you may never actually use. You might just want to switch to it like once, and then it's taking up space. That's why you have the ability to do the uploads with the configs the way they are, and that's why I do my library the way I do it. Because, so if you think about the memory on the board, so say even if you could fit, 20 base effects plus color change, all of a sudden if you wanted to do that 21st effect, you would have to rewrite to the board anyway. So it kind of undoes itself, but it can be done because it's already been done. It's not there now. Doesn't mean it won't be in the future. And I probably didn't answer your question, but that's basically it. But totally could be done. The code actually is sitting in the fork to do it. Let's see. So for a lockup, it's kind of going to be like this. It's going to be a little more. Oops, let me get your question out of the way. So for lockup, so again, going forward for my library, lockup is now 3 parts. 2 of those parts are important for battle mode. In particular, it's begin lockup and end lockup. If you're in battle mode, your clash is begin lockup, end lockup in quick succession. So because it's 3 parts, it'll be a little more complex than this. But what I'm going to have is I'm going to have the ability, you're going to pick a color for your begin lockup, and you can technically pick a color for your end lockup. Those 2 colors, if you choose the same color, it's gonna do one thing. If you choose different colors, the lockup section itself will actually try to take on both. And this is why it's taking me a little while to build it. We'll transition across that. So we'll use a transition effect inside the lockup to go from the begin lockup color to the end lockup color. And the idea there is to get it to be seamless. Now, if you have the same begin and end lockup color, and again, it's going to be out of these as a start point, so it'll be out of these four options. Say you choose this color for begin lockup and this color for end lockup, I would make the lockup transition from this color to this color over a period of time. And what that'll do is it'll actually let you start out here, change, and then end there, and it'll look seamless. So that's where the trick's coming in, is getting that to work properly. But that's what I'm going to hope to do. But it will be using, where'd you go? Transition effect. So it's really just this. It's just going to be a little more complex of a transition. And then, like I said, if you happen to choose the same color for begin and end lockup, I'm actually going to do something different in the lockup section, but I haven't got it worked out yet. So that's kind of where I'm going after the lockup. But the base colors will be the main thing. You'll pick your base colors, and then you'll be able to kind of get the code from there. But if you wanted to start messing with it, it's going to be transition effect. But what you do is you just obviously change the effect to lockup begin, and then build out. So because lockup usually lasts a longer time, you would change these fade times and everything. But that's essentially, excuse me, throat's dry. That's the rough concept. Some stuff is still up in my head. It hasn't come out yet into code. Let's see. And that was asking about lockup. Yeah, let's see. I'm just catching up with you guys. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, you can totally do whatever colors you want. And I mean, over time, I'll probably add more colors. Because the library, I hand code all that HTML and JavaScript, so it takes me a while. And I'm not really a programmer. I'm decent with it, but I'm not a programmer. So I'm slow. So I have to start with smaller things, and then over time, I can add to it. But the concept will be those four base colors, and then maybe get some other colors there. But you can grab anything in editor and change any of the colors you want. Yep, yeah, I think I just answered that. Yep, you can pick any color you want. So let's see. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, so so again, changing the colors is already there. Changing so blade profiles, the effects, so the effects that run. There's a few ways it can be done already. The color change fork had it. There is another method that's possible. It's pieces of it are actually in the OS already. It's just not being used for that. There's something. It's early, so I don't want to go too far, but there's potentially, and don't hold me to it, potentially something in OS 6 that might actually get near that, pretty close to that. But right now it's all theoretical, and it's kind of it's an idea and something from Frederick. So it hasn't formed itself yet, but it's definitely, I mean, the possibility of it is there. I mean, it's not hard to do. It's just doing it in a way that makes sense so that people who don't need it don't lose out on other features, I guess would be the way to say it. But maybe OS 6, maybe. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, and I understand. Yeah, I'm not an installer. I know Megtooth has kind of gone along this line too. For people who are used to the other boards that you can just kind of pick it up and go and just run through stuff. I will say from my side of the equation in designing effects, and I don't know these boards. I actually have never owned a CFX or the other one. I'm terrible with the name. What is it? G8 Golden Harvest. And I know there's other ones out there. I would expect that those boards have a lot more limitation on their effect capabilities because they have to allocate the memory to have them there, even if they're not being used, which is what Frederick was talking about. So if somebody is like afraid to learn to program a Proffie, I don't know. To me, like, I had a conversation a little while back with somebody about it, and I said, if you're afraid to learn a manual transmission, you really shouldn't buy that high-end sports car. Like, don't go buying a Lamborghini if you don't want to learn manual, because you're not going to get it in automatic, because that would be a sin. So that's kind of where my personal view is. I know not everybody wants to hear that because everybody wants this stuff, but nothing about Proffie is so hard to learn. It's scary if you've never done it, but once you've done it, it's not scary anymore. But it's totally possible that might be something that gets added. It's just not there yet. Yeah, let's see. Yep, yeah, the fork had it, Megtooth, and we had it already. Yeah, so in order to do any of that stuff, the styles have to be there. Like, you can't have a style appear magically on the board. It has to be saved to memory. So if you needed to load up all those style options, that's what we did in the fork. Actually, if you go, I mean, looking back at that code, it was crazy, but there was 13 colors and 13 effects, or 10 effects, I think we built, and the code was like pages and pages, and it worked, but it also took up a ton of memory. But that's basically what it can do. But because you can just upload your config in no time at all, and I've tried to make it as easy as I can with the library, it would just be, if it came, it would probably have to be something that could be turned off. Because if you're going to sacrifice memory for something that not everybody uses, I think that would be kind of tough. Let's see. Catching over. I'm going to have to get off in a minute or two, but let me catch up with the chat because I kind of went off subject a little bit. Yeah, I'm late to the game. Yeah, I'm sure most of you on this chat have more experience with more sabers than I actually do. I got introduced with Proffie thanks to Megtooth, and that's all I've ever done. I mean, I've seen videos of stuff, but I've got what I like, so I don't have to get anything else. Not saying anything negative about the other boards. I know people like to jump on that stuff. I don't use it, so I can't speak to it. Let's see. Yeah, NB4. Yeah, I just jumped right to Proffie. Yeah, I mean, that's why I put the library together, was to try to make it easy. Because I mean, I do know when I first started, like, and I was trying to do styles, I was using this older version, but I was using the editor, and it took a while for me to get everything that I ever wanted. And I realized that if I just put all that time in to get something I wanted, why not do it so that other people can just grab it? So I actually started on the sharing thread. It's on TRA. I think it went kind of dead, but if you dig back in the TRA forum, it used to be a Proffie or a Teensy Saber sharing thread. And I posted so much stuff in there, and I actually started posting so many things that I was like, well, this is great and all, but it makes it hard to find. So that's what made me build the library. And I've made the library better. The original library wasn't as sophisticated. I wouldn't call it sophisticated, but was basically paper clips and band-aids. And now this one actually has some semblance of a form to it. But that was the idea of it, was to make it easier so that, and that's the idea with open source. I mean, if somebody spends the time to make something that other people want to use, having it there just so people can get it was kind of the concept. So the sharing thread is the start point that led to the library, and now everything else. Thanks, Max. Yeah, I'm glad everybody enjoys the effects, and I'm happy to share with everybody. It's kind of what makes this kind of like a fun community. Yeah, let's see. Oh, you doing your flagship SA22Cs buttons? Yeah. Oh, that was what I forgot to show. I gotta get off in a minute or two, but let me show. I've had questions for people looking for Matt's file, and I meant to show this earlier. If you're in the open source group, so right now I think he only put it in the open source group. if you go, and if you're not a member of the open source group, I don't know why you're watching a Proffie video without being part of this group. So join. But the under files, it's right here. Now, if new files get added, it'll slide down, but you want the newer one. He did an update, and not that far apart, but this file here, you're going to save this to your props folder for 5.7, and then do the include just like you would mine. And then he has different defines. So that's the other thing that's come up. Like all mine defines. So this is actually, so like the Fett263, that's my tag, that's my screen name on almost every forum I've ever been part of since actually before forums existed. So I'm old enough to remember AOL and AOL chat or whatever the hell it was called back then. But that's kind of where it started. It's actually, Fett was my first character in the 501st, and 263 is my TK number. And I am old enough and been around long enough that I have the 3-digit TK numbers. I think they're up to like 6 now because there's so many members, but I am one of the originals. I was actually, I think, the 3rd Boba Fett in the entire 501st when I got approved, and I was one of the original 6 of the Empire City Garrison. That's why 263 is my TK ID number. Fett is just the character, and that's where that screen name came from. But Fett263, the defines, Frederick wanted those defines named Fett263 because they work with my file. So it's not just like a vanity tag. It's Frederick wants to be able to keep them apart. So the defines for SA22C's file will start SA22C. So just if you can't take the Fett263 defines that I have at the top of my file and use his button file. You have to use his defines and use the SA22C at the beginning. And he's got a few different defines. But if you read the top of the H file, let me see if it'll let me open it here. I don't know if it's going to open. Oh, it's going to open into, yeah. So if you look at the top here, these are his defines. So they do the same thing, but Frederick, in order to keep stuff separate, particularly with the config, he has us name the defines that are unique to a prop file with the prop files maker. So that's why if you see SA22C, and also on shtok's older file, you'll see that too. It's actually just to keep everything segmented. It doesn't mean that somebody's trying to take something or somebody's trying to like vanity their name on top of stuff. It's to keep stuff in order. So that's there. So if you need the SA22C, which is 1 button, but he has 1 button, 2 button, 3 button. So I do my 2 button differently than he does. So if you want to use his 2 button setup or his 1 button setup, or if you have 3 buttons, his file, the easiest place is the open source group to get it. I think he missed the cutoff for 5.7, so I think his file and Dimitri's, when he's done with it, will actually end up being in OS 6 again in the future when it comes out. It's not like around the corner. Let's see. I'm glad that, yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. I'm glad to inspire. Yeah. So, and Mike, I don't mean to like not say that the idea isn't out there, and it's and Tom Megtooth can attest to it. We've asked a few times to get it in. It hasn't made it yet. Doesn't mean it won't be there one day. And like I said, there was something that kind of I had an idea about that I had asked Frederick about for OS 6 again in the future. It's not like around the corner. That might lead to something like what you're looking for. But it's right now it's concept only, so it'd still be a little ways away. But with how fast stuff develops in Proffie, you could say something isn't there today, and then all of a sudden tomorrow it pops up. Let me see. Thanks everybody else for all the kind words. I just want to make sure I don't miss any questions I can grab real quick. Oh yeah, Megtooth, risky, nice. Yeah, you have the longer number. Yeah, I've been around a long time. I remember when there was such a crazy discussion at the time when we had to go from 3 digits to 4. That's how long I've been around with the 501st. 1997. Damn. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I have no plans to do a 1 button. SA22Cs is the best option for battle mode. And I know Dmitri is going to be updating battle mode to his file. He just hasn't had time yet. So it'll be coming. I don't have one button sabers, and in all honesty, with everything that SA22C and Dmitri have already done for one button, I don't think I'd offer anything different. Because you limited in controls. I think I'm catching up to everybody here. So yeah, and actually I'm gonna sign off. So I didn't get to everything. I know, Jason, I hope that the blast and the clash give you enough of a start point. I am gonna get them added to the library. So they will be coming. And like I said, the concept will be 4 colors as a start point, plus I'll have some of these blends like this, which is what the topic was originally going to be this. Oops, what? I not hit that? Oh, I changed it. I got to fix that. Let me close with what I was talking about earlier. So it'll be like so. So we'll get some of this added to the library also. But you can go ahead and start playing around with it if you rewind the video and watch what everything was. Otherwise, as soon as I have it in the library, I will update everybody, let everybody know. But it'll be coming. And again, you can choose other colors too. I chose those 4 based on the film references. You can put any colors you want anywhere. So thanks everybody for joining me tonight. I hope hopefully it gave you some information you can use, and there'll be a lot more stuff coming. So Lockup and to be a clash. You can, hang on, let me see this. Sorry, I was about to sign off, but I saw this pop up. And to be a clash. You can. To me, the blending gets a little tricky, but you totally can. All you do is change out that effect that triggers it. But yeah, there's going to be stuff coming. I had plans for OS5. I just haven't got everything built out yet, so there'll be more. But thanks again, everybody. And if I missed your question, I hope to catch you next time. I should be good next Tuesday. I always post when I'm about to go because now that life's starting to return to normal, some of my nights are getting taken away from me. So I can't set it as a always thing, but I'll try to get on here on Tuesdays when I can. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a good night.